part of the success journey for me in working with a client is understanding, like, how do I help them get success and what are all the things it takes to have success? And it's not just exercise. Now, exercise is a super important part of it, and movements is a super important part of it, but it's not just exercise. And I think for people that are listening to this that aren't health coaches, it's understanding what is health. It's not just exercise. We can break it down into multiple areas. And I think if you're a health coach and you're thinking, or I want to be a health coach, it's like remembering that it takes a very long time to be good at all of these. These are all specialized areas. And so identifying where the correct tool is for your client so they can get the help they need is really important.
Welcome to another episode of the Health Coach Academy podcast. I'm your host, Omar Cumberbatch of OmarCumberbatch.com. As always, appreciate you joining me. And today is the Thanksgiving, post-Thanksgiving episode. And I don't know of a guest who I should be more or could be more thankful for than Isaac Ho. And he's back on and he's going to drop his usual immense knowledge on us. But one of the things that we're going to do a little differently today is do it in the sense where we are going to be talking about more of the health coaching aspect instead of the business stuff. So Isaac's going to bring out all of his tricks, and you're going to be really, really impressed with all the stuff that he's going to share with the audience. So really excited about, changing it up a bit. Anyway, please leave a rating and review on iTunes so I can continuously get guests like Isaac on the show. And also, please take a peek at the website. A lot of good things going on. I also, besides having the podcast course out, I'm actually partnering up with a buddy of mine to do a New Year's resolution busting program. Then this was basically for all of us who are trying to get our weight straight as New Year's resolutions and blow through the holiday. And one of the things that are sad as far as what the statistics are just saying is that most people don't even get to the February mark with that kind of resolution going on and going strong. So it's really unfortunate. And we do have a master plan behind that to get that fixed. So I'm really excited to share that. So if you jump on that website, it's in the shop. Both courses are. And if it may not be for you, but if you know anybody who can get benefit of any of that stuff, jump on and take a peek. So let's jump into it. Hey, Isaac, welcome back. Missed you, man.
Yeah, I missed you too, man. Go too long without talking to my fellow health coach brother.
Yeah, no, it's always a pleasure. You have no idea how many people comment about our banter. So, I'm very excited to share another episode with the guys and girls who are doing the health coach thing. So, yeah, thanks for coming on again.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm excited that we're going to talk about really just creating success in health, whether you're a health coach. Specifically, this will probably help you think about how you sequence success for clients. But also, if you're a person and you're listening to this and you're not a health coach, or maybe you're on the fence thinking you want to be a health coach, like, how do you get healthy? What does health mean? And that's something I'm super passionate about. So thanks for having me on, man.
No, I love it. So, yeah, one of the things that I know that we've always beaten as far as our drum on Health Coach Academy is how do we get these clients? How do we do the marketing, the branding, et cetera? But yeah, let's, now we got some clients, man. Like, how are we going to help them? Like, what does help look like you said? So yeah, tell us a little bit about what perspective you've had and how you came to it about just this whole process around the other side of this and how we're going to help our coaches, help our clients properly.
Yeah. Well, I think I started when I was 17 years old as a health coach, but I think the thing that I realize, and I think often is, and I didn't really think about it until someone asked me, it's like, when did you first start really realizing that your body was like having problems? And it was actually when I was like 4 years old. And I was walking in this mall. My dad's a doctor. So he was doing one of his continued education credits. And I remember I was having this great time because we were in Chicago. We were like looking at FAO Schwartz, this amazing toy store. Like, if you remember what that toy store was like in Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it's still around, but it was ginormous. So as a kid, it was like Christmas was happening every 5 seconds. And I was having such a great time with my older brother and my mom. And all of a sudden, like, my stomach just started. I didn't know what was happening because I was like 4, but I won't forget it because it was traumatic. I just started having diarrhea. Yeah. I started just having uncontrollable diarrhea. And I didn't know what was happening. I was asking my mom. My mom's like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. Because, of course, moms understand kids. So my mom thought maybe he's got a little bad diarrhea. So we go to the store. Sears, I remember, and we got more underwear for me. And I'll never forget like the shame of watching my underwear pair after pair get browned. And it was to a point where like we couldn't keep hanging out anymore. We had to go back to the hotel because I just kept having diarrhea. And
Mm.
I remember just being like, oh my gosh, like we were having such a great time. And like that stuck with me. And when I grew up and I didn't always have stomach problems that were noticeable, but like back pain, knee pain, watching other kids and other people like seem to enjoy the experience in their body, but me not really enjoying my experience in my body. And part of it was mental and confidence, right? So I was overweight. You know, that's one of the things that happens when you're not super healthy is you really just don't process nutrients well. So I was overweight even though I didn't eat a lot of food. You know, it was I'm sure people can relate to that when you have issues with your metabolism. And so I was like, I'm going to have to make some different changes because my older brother was very lean. And that's something that I learned later is like, okay, like when I piece it all together, it was like, what was the thing that actually made my stomach bad that one time? It wasn't an accident. We actually stopped at the food court and we shared a Cinnabon.
Mm.
And so if you have bad bacteria and you eat gluten and you eat sugar, well, you know what? One person might be okay, the person like my brother, but I wasn't. But the other thing that I just realized later when I learned more about microbiome is my brother and I are only like 13 months apart. So my mom only had enough breast milk for my brother. So my
Mm.
brother got all the bacteria that helps you actually break things down, and I didn't get any of that. So my life was completely different as a result of not having the enzymes ability to actually process nutrients and break down and absorb food. And so he walks around at like, 8% body fat all the time. And I was walking around like 28% body fat.
Wow.
And so then I had to like actually learn to exercise, which was crazy because my brother could sit around and he was fine. He'd get off the couch and sprint. And I was just like heavy and my back hurt and my knees hurt. But I was like, I don't want to keep living like this. I made that decision like in the fifth or sixth grade. And so in that point, I realized I have to make some big changes. So I got like little men's health journal and I just started riding my Airdyne bike with the hooded sweater on. I started drinking ice water because I heard it would increase your metabolism. And that's when I really lost like a lot of body fat, but it didn't mean I was healthy. I just like was lighter. Um, and so eventually, as I went through this transformation, being like, well, now I'm not overweight. What do I do to actually feel good about myself? Building strength, building confidence physically, and then running into this huge issue. By the time, I became a health coach at 17, it was like, oh, I want to be more yoked like every young guy. So then I started learning about like putting muscle on. And I got a lot of muscle on, but then the thing that happened was I started getting really sick by the time I was in my mid 20s. And it's crazy because I have a new client that started with me. Really interesting. She's like a strength coach for the Marines. But one of the things that she told me, and I had the same issue, where like I kept getting strep to a point where they're like, we're just going to have to take your tonsils out. And I was like, wow, I don't know if I really should be getting my tonsils out. My dad's a doctor, so he said like, I don't know if I would see if you could fix it with something else. You're like, you know a lot of health stuff. See if you can find a way not to get them out because I wouldn't recommend it. Well, anyway, when we're bringing up this client, she actually had her tonsils taken out, and the bottom of her mouth collapsed
Oh
when they
my
pulled
God.
the tonsils out. Her bottom of her palate, so like when you take your tongue and you touch the top of your mouth, it collapsed. The giant hole because it destabilized her palate. And so then when she went to drink, all the fluids would go up into her nose.
Wow.
Crazy. So I'm so glad I didn't get my tonsils out, but it's like you never know kind of what people have. But that's when I really started learning more about bacteria and all these other things. But I'd say the biggest thing that really impacted me was having health coaches that I worked with, like a personal trainer that was a great friend of mine. We lived together for multiple years. Her mom's actually a psychologist. She just wrote a book. Really excited for her. But me and this friend, she unfortunately she passed away, and I remember her struggles because she was someone who was a lawyer, very successful lawyer, and the hours were just killing her. And she felt terrible in her body and she was sick all the time. So she decided she was going to hire a life coach. So she hired this life coach, and the life coach helped her change her habits. And so then she got healthier, but then she ran into some really strong technical issues. So she started getting really bad foot pain. She started getting really bad knee pain, neck pain, elbow pain. And just from like working her body to try to lose the weight, she started to break down. And unfortunately, it made it so she couldn't work out anymore. So she wasn't lazy. She still tried to eat like very clean. And she did because I lived with her for 2 years. She ate cleaner than anyone I knew. But when you can't get your metabolism up and you can't do enough activity because you keep having spasms and your joints keep breaking, is unfortunate. And she was my best friend, and unfortunately, she passed away in her 30s, early 30s, because she just had so much stuff going on that eventually her organs just failed, and she passed out and hit her head and suffocated on her tongue by herself. And so, to me, that became part of the success journey for me in working with the client is understanding, like, how do I help them get success, and what are all the things it takes to have success? And it's not just exercise. Now, exercise is a super important part of it, and movements is a super important part of it, but it's not just exercise. And I think for people that are listening to this that aren't health coaches, it's understanding what is health. It's not just exercise. We can break it down into multiple areas. And I think if you're a health coach and you're thinking, or I want to be a health coach, it's like remembering that it takes a very long time to be good at all of these. These are all specialized areas. And so identifying where the correct tool is for your client so they can get the help they need is really important, because otherwise so for example, like my friend who passed away, like we were doing a lot of manual therapy, we were doing a lot of exercise stuff. She was seeing dietitians and they just couldn't scratch it. And what I realized now is like she really needed someone who was very, very good with blood work. And so the problem when you're unhealthy is you go to see a doctor and they pull your blood work and they just tell you that like you need to lose weight. Like, of course your blood work's bad, you're overweight. And what they don't really look at are things like your liver enzymes. They don't look at how your body's detoxing. They don't look at kinds of bacterial trends that would indicate damage to the pancreas that would then make somebody insulin resistant, which is what happened to my friend. And so she actually couldn't process blood sugar anymore. And she was basically diabetic, walking around diabetic. And so her body just failed and she fell down, hit her head and passed. And so those are like specialized cases where if you're a health coach, it's like, okay, maybe exercise is not the solution. Or if you've been trying to exercise a lot, it's like, maybe that's not the solution. Maybe you need a different tool. And so client success is really based on, I think, understanding where people are at in their health journey and what tools they need that are the appropriate tools.
No, yeah, no. Thanks for sharing. And I remember the story about your friend, and always want to give my condolences for it, as it's a terrible thing, especially like when someone's really, really trying to right this ship, and you see that she definitely was one of those people who was going out there and trying to find out how to actually cure herself and just live a better life. And one of the things is, I think health coaches who are starting probably have a lot of big dreams about who they can help. And like you said, it's there's a lot to this, like their specific client that they're dealing with, how important it is to know exactly where they are in this journey. Because there's people who come to these health coaches asking for help who have never even exercised a day in their lives, as opposed to someone who was like your friend, who was probably very knowledgeable about certain things, but just was missing one element.
Yeah, totally. Like, and I think that like for me, I think the difference between understanding therapy versus understanding performance or understanding maintenance, right? And so like a lot of health coaches, I think it's like we want to help someone heal in a way because they have a problem. But understanding a healing skill set is actually different than understanding a maintenance skill set. And that's different than understanding a performance skill set. So like a personal trainer, just because like a physical therapist can maybe potentially help somebody overcome an injury that they have, but doesn't mean that they could help them become an elite athlete. It's a completely different skill set. And a personal trainer is like, hey, you are at a current stage, you want to lose 5 pounds. Cool, we lose 5 and we just maintain that. That's a very different skill set than getting someone who's like in a lot of pain out of pain, right? So there's a continuum, there's a spectrum. So I think as a health coach, it's important to understand where your skill sets are. So like, with biometry, we have a spectrum of renewal. And so usually it's repair. And so people want to come in and they go, well, I want to change my body fat. But by the time you have a body fat issue or you have pain of any sort, you've already borrowed from your bank account to a point where you can't do that yet or be successful. Or maybe you could do it a little bit, but then it spins backwards. And so then they start and they stop and they start and they stop and they get pretty frustrated. And so that's called, in the technical term for it, but we also call it the same thing in our system. We call it recomp. Like recomp is a very common term for personal trainers when they change someone's body composition. So a lot of people are looking at recomp, but they actually borrowed so much and they have all these health issues like hormone problems. I talked to a lady who was a bodybuilder who had to stop because her thyroid was so messed up that they're like, dude, if you keep working out like this, you're just gonna have thyroid like issues. She was already medicated for it. So it's like, well, we can't do that. We have to repair. And so like the repair phase is really different than, let's say, the rebuild phase, which is the next phase. Like in the repair phase, you need to do really specific, almost therapeutic like things to get a person to actually be out of pain and lower the inflammation and then be able to like actually function. In the rebuild phase, that's when you actually have to help that person like rebuild what was damaged. In the reorganize phase, that's really where you want to redesign how that person moves in the first place so they don't have the problem again. And now they're bulletproof, so you can do the recomp,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I know, like for us and our company, what we're really good at is the repair, rebuild, reorganize to recomp. But some people, like they may be really good at the recomp on, they may not actually be good at the repair or the rebuild. And so I think if you think about it from that perspective, it helps you when a client comes to you or someone comes to you, it helps you understand where they're at in the process of what they need so you can make the right recommendations. And you may have to just be like, hey, you're more of a repair person. Like you're in pain, you need to fix that pain first versus being like, hey, you're not in pain, but you're not really moving that well. I think we should reorganize before a recomp, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. And again, like you said, it is a spectrum of things that need to be done. And one of the reasons why I think health coaches are really interested in it is because they think that they can help people in so many ways, but it just may not be that their specialty. Like how could you help like health coaches understand where they have to stay in their lane?
Yeah, I would say, well, part of it is just from a business lesson. It's like, what is the problem I solve? And so, like, when it comes to the physical side of what I do, it's like there's a specific front end problem I solve. So the front end problem that I usually solve is someone actually going like, well, like my knees hurt. It's
Hmm.
like if your knees hurt and you're like, I want to work out, but like even getting on the couch is hard. Or your back hurts and you're like, I want to work out, but even using my back is hard. Or I want to work out, but like my wrist actually hurts just from using the computer when I work on my business. That is like the front end problem I solve. And so then I'm like, yes, you have these problems that matches the repair.
Hmm.
Now, if someone's coming to me and they're like, there's always a mental component to it. So we have to work in the mental component of what helps a person. But so, for example, if I coach someone on mindset when they have a wrist problem, like it could help a little bit if they have less stress and it doesn't pull from the nervous system down from the neck into the hand. But it's not going to be the primary thing they need because if it was really stress based, they would have the problem on both sides, right? It would be a left and a right wrist issue. So it's understanding that front end offer. It's the same like if we're doing business work. It's like, well, what is the thing that we want to help people with initially? Like they come to us to solve. That's the first problem on the top of their mind. So like in the company my wife and I run for business development, it's like get premium clients online organically. What does that person want? Well, they want leads. Get leads online. And so like that's the problem. Now, are they going to realize once they get leads that they can't sell? Yes, absolutely. They're going to realize they need to actually be able to talk to someone and help that person feel heard and all those things, but not yet. They're just not that aware yet. And so the person that comes in, they have an awareness of their pain. So then I'm like, okay, we've built these tools and resources for that. And we build our process for that too. I think that's also important. With some health coaches I meet, they're like, well, I could help this person with this thing and that thing and this thing and that thing. And my question to them is just like, how well is your process built out for that? Like, how long would it take you to be able to do that with the person? Because if you're really an expert in that field and you have the solution, then it's not a long process. It's kind of like if you make the same pretzel every day. It doesn't take you 50 hours. But if you're like, I'm a baker and I can bake anything, well, I guarantee you it takes you a long time to figure out how today you're going to make croissants, tomorrow you're going to make a muffin, and Wednesday you're going to make scones. And then all of a sudden someone comes up and says, dude, I'd love a 6-layer cake. And it's
Hmm.
like, that's just too stressful because those are all completely different things. It's hard, right? So maybe you could bake 3 things really well, but you're not going to bake 100 things really well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm glad you put the time component because that's one of the things that it seems that helps you in your business model and obviously helping your clients specifically. What time frames are we working with here? One of the things that I notice about observation of other programs and such, you got your 6 week programs, your 3 month programs, 6 years, all kinds of different variations of it. How does a health coach go about figuring that out, and how specifically with you, and how do you figure it out?
Yeah, well, that's a great. I love that question because like people ask me all the time, how long is it going to take me to fix this or get healthy?
Hmm.
And then my answer to that is always like, well, we have to understand where you're starting, right? And so if somebody comes in and they're like, I want to start a business, and I'm like, okay, cool. How much market? How many people you have on your email list, right? And it's like, well, none. Okay. Well, just so you know, this is going to be a longer process because you don't have like any assets to start. Does that make sense? And so
Yeah.
it's the same thing with the body. It's like if we evaluate how much assets do you have, because if you're already depleted, we can't just crank you really hard. So if you're like, I want to lose 10 pounds, awesome. We'll tell you what, you could just not eat anything for a week. Do you want to do that? Because you lose 10 pounds. Well, no, I don't want to do that. Well, why don't you want to do that? Well, there's two reasons they go. One, I'd probably be more unhealthy, if they even think about that. Be like, yep, sure. So you actually wouldn't be healthy. You would just be lighter. Two, when you eat it, what do you think happens? Oh, you just gain the weight back again. So like we're just chasing our tail at that point.
Hmm.
So from a process standpoint, understanding like how do we not chase the tail is where it all starts. And for me, that starts with understanding assets. So if you understand the asset the person has, for example, like if I look at a marker for someone in terms of connective tissue and they go, yeah, like my connective tissue hurts. Well, if I see you have high cortisol, well, we know cortisol actually depletes and breaks down tissue. So if you have high cortisol, we already know you're starting in a deficit hormonally and your tissues are tearing themselves down. You're catabolic.
Hmm.
We see low total protein, it just means that you're not absorbing enough protein. Well, you can't create new connective tissue without collagen and protein. So then we know that you've got a deficit there. So if we understand all the assets and we evaluate those, it tells us what the timeline is going to be like likely. And so if we take all the theoreticals of those assets, and then we take the second layer, which is ability. So how much can this person do based off their schedule, willingness, resources? And then we take the third thing, which is their mindset, like how focused are they and how much bandwidth do they have to focus? And we combine the three, well, that creates their timeline. So we
Hmm.
could take somebody, for me, I could take someone through the same quote 24-week healing process, which is generally like 6 months, but someone who has no kids, that doesn't have high demanding work, and that doesn't have many other things going on, they may be able to do that process in a straight 24 weeks. But another client of mine who owns a business that works till 8 p.m. every day, that doesn't have time to cook, that's now eating fast food every single day, that's super stressed and has like let's just say emotional stuff unhealed with their mom and taking care of themselves and all that stuff. Well, that same 24 weeks could actually take me 18 months just because I can't dole out those stages depending on what's going on with them at that time. Because if they're in a catabolic state and I give them things to repair, and they're in a teardown phase, then we would waste that phase. We would waste that exposure. So they would do all that work, take all those supplements only for it to not be effective. So timing is everything, but you would start first with understanding the assets.
No, that totally makes sense. Everybody has to have a unique program designed specifically for them, and it's lifestyle, like you said too. Like we cannot expect the same to be for a single mom who has 3 kids, and a single guy who has none, right? And just running around doing whatever all the time in the world. One of the things that you've mentioned a bunch of times, and I didn't realize after all these years, you do a lot of lab work. And I did not realize the company had such a hard involvement in that. And that's like one of the things that I could say that's a shortcut, because
It's a shortcut. It
yeah, because
is.
yeah. So tell us about that, because I think that's really an important separation from a lot of what health coaches doing right now. Not a lot of them have access to labs and can look at the results. Like, I mean, that's the easiest thing that you get the market, so you get a nice idea of what's going on right off the bat.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was like doing a talk the other week, and there's probably like 50 something people in the room. And I said, how many of you have a doctor that you go to see and they pull like blood work? Like, because, regular blood work, you and I have talked about this with your sister having lung cancer and things like that. Preemptively, like how many people are doing it. And there was like 3 or 4 people in that room, and they were like my clients. There was like no one else that was. And so blood work was like really confusing to me. Um, Man, I'll tell you, it is like a hack. I think, we have a nurse practitioner on our team that I mentor, and the blood work training that they really get in medical school is very different than like what I have with functional diagnostic nutrition coaching and the specialists and consultants I've hired to train me. And it just came from having my own problem. Like, I was working with a diet coach and they were telling me all these healthy things to eat. And I just like kept having worse stomach reactions. And it was
Mm-hmm.
like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And then I started to get really angry when I dieted, like cranky. And long story short is that person referred me to someone and they were like, this person's like the Yoda of this continent. Like celebrities would go and when celebrities would shoot movies in Australia, they would hire him to work
Mm-hmm.
with them. He was so well known. So I ended up hiring that guy, and he's on my consulting team, and I've been learning from him for over 4 years. And so he taught me basically like why people will have all these issues and how to get really forensic with looking at these values. And I still defer to him because the guy's been doing it for like 30 something years. Like, and obviously you can learn a lot, but blood work is not a small thing. So I would say like if you're listening to this and you're a normal person and you're like, oh, I don't have like a lot of blood work and stuff like that. What I would just say is like it helps to have some, and then your blood work never lies. That's the cool thing. Your blood work never lies. So like you'll understand like if your organs are working or not, you'll understand. I think the hard part is it's very mystical. One, a lot of people think they only get blood work when something's super wrong. Two, they just look at the bar and it's like it's high or low. And if you look at like a medical range for like the range, it could be anywhere from 0 to 180, sometimes even 700. Like look at testosterone, the range is like ridiculous. And so if you don't have like healthy people to bench that against, a lot of times people will actually come to me and they'll say like, I had a bunch of lab work done, so much lab work done, but it's like it's fine, there's like a couple things, and so they just sent me on my way. That's super common. And then I'll look at it with the values that my consultants use, and I mean, my nurse practitioner will look at it and will be like, wow, okay, like none of this is fine. Like this person is deficient in like 6 different trends. And so you're just interpreting that in a very different way. And it helps. And I think one of the reasons why I appreciate, I'll tell you 3 times where blood work has really saved my butt. One is when I had someone that I was doing work with and their back pain wouldn't go away, or they just would feel worse. And then it would be like I would treat them, they would feel worse afterwards. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I looked at their blood work, I realized, wow, this person doesn't have any nutrients. So like all the work I'm doing to drain all this tissue and get them de-inflamed, they can't actually run the chemical process to benefit from that. And so then I was like, here's some, nutrients I would take, and they did it. And then, you know what? And then the treatments worked.
Yeah.
So, that saved me a ton of like, 6 months of trying different stuff. I think sometimes the timing is really important. So that's key. Other times where it saves my butt all the time is people that try to lose weight and they have the inability to get rid of toxins. And so they'll be working out with their trainers, they'll be eating better, but they still don't lose any weight. And it's like really frustrating for them. And they may try to do better things and we'll clean it up a little bit, but it doesn't really impact anything. And then we'll pull blood work and we'll see that they have like a candida overgrowth, which
Mm-hmm.
is like a fungus or a yeast. And so the thing that's always, interesting about that is like when you have more fungus, you absorb more nutrients. It's like a really strong bacteria. And so you can eat very little food, but you won't lose weight because you're absorbing the same amount of nutrients as someone who eats a lot of food.
Yeah, no, it's
So
amazing.
then you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm working out, I'm doing all this stuff, I'm not losing any weight. So like addressing that imbalance is something. And I talk to a lot of dietitians and nutritionists, and that's more of a functional medicine thing. So they don't really do that. And so they'll refer people to me for that kind of stuff. And so that's how I'll be able to get someone that's like struggling to lose 20 something percent body fat, because it's usually like a candida overgrowth.
Yeah, definitely. So who's the person you're working with?
Yeah, his name's Dave O'Brien. He's like a ghost though. You look him up, you barely find anything. The guy's so busy that like I have to keep him on retainer just to be able to get him to consult. But you can look him up, Dave O'Brien. Yeah. He moved to
Wow.
Croatia now. And now he lives like as an expat. Yeah, he's super cool guy. Has his own supplement company too. He just started. So um great guy. I'd say like that's the second time that blood work. So like if you're struggling to lose weight, blood work is really important. If you're struggling to mystery pain is the last one. So for example, like sometimes people be like, yeah, we have all these symptoms, and they think it's because we have fungus in the house, like mold or something. But you have to realize if you have a lot of poisoning in your body already, then you just react worse to any extra poison or allergy.
Right,
And so
right.
that's the third thing that I'll see with people. It's like they'll be super sensitive to stuff because they have so many toxins in their body already. They have to get rid of those bacterial imbalances to really actually feel better, because the body has it has a reserve, and then that reserve should keep you fairly healthy against like 5G network, internet, radiation, microwave. Don't stand in front of the microwave. I was like, I'll tell you, microwave does something, because when I'm on calls and I walk by my microwave and it's on, all of a sudden my phone stops working. So, all those
Yeah.
things are real, but like, should they really make you sick? And should you, explode when you drink water that has a little fluoride? And there's no, like, your body's supposed to be pretty robust. But if you're just sick from the get-go and you haven't addressed all those deficits, you don't have any of those assets, then yeah, you tend to be either sick all the time, can't lose any weight, or you just don't benefit from any of the therapies that people give you because you can't actually run the processes.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a misunderstood area of health, is just the toxins that you're exposed to. I've done a lot of shows with people regarding the toxin issue, on this podcast, Burn Fat. So it's fascinating what we're exposed to. But like you said, we're supposed to be resilient by nature. But if you overloaded to begin with, it's just makes it that much harder to fight that battle.
Yeah, and I think the thing most people don't think about, and I have a lot of people in their 30s that are younger that I work with that have been sick since they were like in the fifth grade, or had problems since they were little. Like they have the same trend problems as their parents, because you have the same bacteria as your mom. You come in the womb, the bacteria gets into you, you go through the vaginal canal, hopefully you do, so you get some kind of bacteria to help you, and then you drink breast milk. So like you're going to have all the problems inherited from all your generations unless you squash them by doing some kind of protocol. And so I think people forget about that. Like, well, why would I be so sick? And it's like, well, I'll tell you, I was sick, and it's, I have the same bacteria as my mom, and I've helped my mom now with her bacteria, but it's impossible my son has the same bacteria as her mom, his mom. I know his symptoms. I've looked at her blood work, again, her protocol, and they're just carbon copies, man.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that, I guess to wrap up, I mean, it's been really enlightening. I mean, one of the things that I say, like, we stick to that business script so much on this show. It's good to get some hardcore coaching for clients out there, because this is make the health coaches out there aware of some of the things that they can do to get their clients some success. So what would you call the ultimate client success as someone going through your particular program, your protocols and such?
And we call it renewal, because at the end of the day, it's, that's what our clients will say. It's like, we worked with Biometry. It was the complete renewal experience I was looking for, or it was the renewal experience I didn't even know I needed. Like, I was just so used to my pain and my tightness and difficulty that I didn't know it didn't have to be this way. So they call it renewal. So I call it renewal, because that's ultimately what they want. And of course, that would be different for each client, depending on kind of where they're at. Like, if you're a health coach and you're listening to this, it may not be renewal for your clients. Maybe they just want to rebuild. Maybe that's good enough for them. Maybe it's they just want to recomp. They just want to have more muscle. I think the longer you're in the industry, like I've been in it for 17 years now, you just start seeing different people that don't get the results, and it makes you create a spectrum of what actually is needed.
Mm-hmm. Love it, love it. So Isaac, pleasure having you back on. We got to do this again and again and again and again and again. We got to keep in touch with you and just really just absorb all the knowledge that you have, because obviously not only you're a business tycoon, you are also a health fanatic and have a wealth of knowledge. And I just thank you for just bringing all your experiences to my show so many times. And yeah, I can't wait for the next one.
Thanks, man. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and I appreciate you sharing all this information with people that are health interested, or people that think they want to become health coaches, because man, like, to learn this stuff and hear this stuff, it's not like you can't Wikipedia this. No. And so the fact that you're putting these kind of resources together for anyone to access, it's a huge mission.
No, appreciate it. Thank you, sir. All right, have a great rest of the day.
Oh, well, brother. Take care.
Hope you enjoyed listening to today's episode of the Health Coach Academy podcast. If you did, jump over to iTunes and leave a rating and or review. It goes a long way in helping get this message out to our fellow health coaches and people in our industry. Also, if you can, jump over to my website, omarcumberbatch.com, where I give out a lot of freebies, including my 5-day sugar challenge for people who are having issues with sugar. And also for health coaches, I have the book, Hidden. It's the 6 not so obvious ways to get your clients unstuck. Have a great day.